Hey, hi there. We're going to do a Mag.JS comments box or comment tutorial based on the React.JS tutorial, their main tutorial in regards to component architecting in JavaScript. We're just going to show how Mag.JS is kind of simpler, cleaner, more elegant in regards to doing that. So here we have it. We have the top level container. It's going to be a comment box, which is going to have a comment list, and inside of that, we're going to have comment. And then it's going to have a sibling comment form to add new comments to the comment list. So why don't we get started? Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is stub out some HTML. We're going to create a comment list container, and inside that it's going to have a comment list container itself. So the ID is for the module, and this is going to be for the data. That's the main difference here. So I'm going to snapshot these as we go along so you can follow. The link will be in the video description. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is create our stub in the JavaScript as well for the comment list. Alright, so there we go. And we need to call our new module, pass the props, and when we get some stub data for now, just for initialization purposes. So here we go. We're going to say this, and then we're going to add it to our comment list over here. So state affects that. So state equals the name of the class, and we pass props that data. Now the reason you can't see anything besides this being iterated, because there's two array objects, is because you have to map it to something specific. But you could already see that it knows that we have two of them, and that's why it iterated it twice. But instead of saying comments, we can say something like author. And we can say text. And that's basically the simplest way in Mag.js to get some data onto a screen. It's really just plain HTML. There's no special templating syntax or anything like that. Alright, just to kind of show you how this works. But we're going to follow this tutorial, and the next thing to do is create a comment box itself. So why don't we do that? And the reason I'm creating it outside of here is because we're going to be cloning this. So this will actually be hidden, but just for right now, I'm going to show you what it's going to look like. So why don't we do an H2 with, we're going to call this, let's say, comment author. And again, there's no, special templating syntax or anything weird like that. It's just simply HTML with different element matchers. ID is for the module, and then within the module, you can use element tag, like we did over here. You can use a class, you can use an ID, name attribute, or data bind value to match things. So don't let this curly braces fool you. I'm just putting this here for edification to know what we want this to map to. Okay, and here you can still see it because it's visual. But this will be hidden when we clone it over and over, or we're going to hide it ourselves. Alright, so following the tutorial, the next thing to do is to create a comment box itself. So we're just going to copy this guy. There's our comment box. And we're just going to set, let's say comment author to author. And then we have that span tag. And that will just be what it was, a text. Props text, like that. So we have that going on, but we are not mapping it yet to this component from within the list. So why don't we do this? Let's map function, make a comment, and since now we're not returning anything, you can't see anything until we do that, and now you can see it. So this is basically doing the same thing that we were doing before. But what we really want to do is we want to map to the component itself, and since we want to clone it, all we're going to have to do is add, instead of props, we're going to pass comment. Now you can see the two comments here, and you can see the clone. So now we're going to hide our clone, and we're going to clone it like that. Okay, so now the next thing we want to do is, because these are promises, is we want to fulfill these promises because the rendering is done asynchronously. So let's copy that, grab this, grab some promises, and there are boilerplate helpers for functions like this in the Mag.JS add-ons library, or you can just create your own. This is just plain JavaScript, obviously. But let's just do that for edification so you can see what is being done here. We're not going to use the add-on helpers. So then function, grab values, and add them back to our state list. And there you go. So now the promises are being rendered through the clone of this and being put into our comment list here. Okay, the next thing is our comment form. Why don't we just do that? We're going to copy this guy. And this is going to be a sibling of comment list. So it's going to be within the comment box. Okay, why don't we stub it out in our HTML as well. Div ID, because it's a module. Oops. And our HTML, I'm just going to copy and paste it. It's just some a little boilerplate. We don't need this guy. All right, let me take a final look at the HTML before we get started with the module, the comment form module. So here's a final look at our HTML because we're not going to be changing anything. We have our clone template for comment, our comment box top container, which has two siblings, comment list and comment form. Here note our name attribute, author, name attribute text is going to be our getters and setters that are going to map to the props here, which then get put into the comment list here. What you see here, this is just edification. This is not being used. This is being used and put into here. Okay. All right. So let's snapshot that. Go back to our JavaScript, and we have a comment form. So now we have to initialize our comment form up here as a sibling. So we'll just create another line here and put that in there. So now we have comment form. So I think the first thing we want to do is create our setters and getters in our comment form, and we're going to introduce controllers now. So controllers are just initializers, a good place to house functions, especially getters and setters too. So our two models are author. We're going to use mag prop helper for this. This is a setter and getter, and text is our other model. Right, so it defaults to nothing. Alright, and then in our form, we're going to hook into some events here, specifically on change. This is a little more boilerplate. Again, this is in Mag.JS add-ons, but I wanted to show how this works. So all we're saying here is to our state with the name attribute that matches our model, helper, setter, getter on top there, add that value to that. That's all we're doing here. Again, there is boilerplate code in Mag.js add-ons that you can use instead of writing this out, but I just want to show how this works. Okay, so next thing would be is on submit, and here we're going to use our controller function. And since we're going to access the model, let's bind to this. And the first thing we want to do is probably prevent default, because we don't want the form being submitted. Alright, so we're going to prevent default. And we're going to check if our model has anything. Actually, we're going to check for both of them, just on text. Okay. And we're going to probably pass something up the chain. So why don't we get a props, probably call it on comment submit or something like that. So probably in here. we're going to create a controller as well up over here, but let's say on, I'm just going to stub this out, on comment submit equals state dot handle comment submit. And this is going to be instead of our controller. Let's say this dot handle comment submit is going to receive our comment. I'm going to bind it to this as well, so we can affect the state. All right, I think we have pretty much everything set up. The only thing we're not doing is calling. What was it? On comment submit, I believe. And we want to pass an author. It's going to be equal to this author. And text is going to equal to this dot text. And here, just to show that this is working, we're just going to add something simple like author. So watcher, and it should affect this H1 up over here. Oh, instead it submitted the whole form. All right, something is goofy. Let's make sure everything matches up here. On comment submit. So props, prevent default. Everything looks good. Let's just check our console. You never know, right? Be something really simple. Looks like there might be an unexpected token. Let's just check that out again. Yes, they both have to be filled out based on our criteria. I think, you know what, this might be it here. All right, let's try this again. You know what, it's not change. Let's go in there. Oh, here we go. The culprit. State.form. It's not this.form. All right, let's try that again. Guest watcher. And you see it updated it right there. I mean, we're not going to do that. We just wanted to show right now how it's done. Okay, so I think we're on track still. So we have our comment handler here. We're passing it the comment that we're getting here from our helper setter getters model, and just passing it back up the chain. And just for our little purposes here, we were just showing you how we have access to it and we can affect the state again. What we really want to do is not affect the state. Up here we want to pass it back to our comment list. So I think it was data, right? And right now it's props.data, but let's change it from props to something that we can change like this, state.data. So our default data is props.data, as you can see here. That's our default, but we want to update it based on what we have added here, right? So we can say this dot data equals this dot, or we could just push it, I think. Let's just try this, pushing it. All right, so we're going to add something new, guest watcher, something new. And there you go. It's just being pushed onto the array, and once something new is being added, it then re-renders everything. So this is just the most simple way to show a comment list and how to add new stuff to it. Let's add another one. Guest watcher 2, something also say. And there you go. It's adding it below there. I mean, that's fine and dandy, but what about persisting the data? So when I refresh it here, we can actually see those previous comments. I think something simple would be to probably just use local storage